My name is Annie Haas, and I am the co-lead of the Incubate Energy Labs program at EPRI. And we've got a really fun presentation in store for you today. And thank you all so much for joining us. Before we get kicked off, just a couple of words about this project. You know, when we ventured into our 2020 cohort year, like so many people and so many other things, we were planning to do all of these projects in person, and we had to then, you know, make the switch to virtual. So the utilities that were involved in our 2020 program kind of said, EPRI, you know, you guys are set up to run this project for us. Why don't you go ahead and do that? And, you know, as it works out, we've got some great expertise with digital tools and AR, VR, R&D underway. So it actually worked out really well. So we led this project on behalf of the utility cohort last year in conjunction with our team in Knoxville and in New York. So some fun things there. It's been it was a fun project, one of 10 that we did last year. So really excited that you all joined us today, and thank you again. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Duncan McSporran, who is the COO of Kognitiv Spark, and also Matt Buck, who is a senior technical leader here at EPRI. Two of them will be explaining to you today what we did in this project in 2020. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Duncan. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Annie. In the interest of the fact you're just about to hear me speaking quite a lot over the next half an hour or so, I'll let Buck introduce himself now, and then what we'll do is sort of crack on with the discussion about the project and a little bit about the company as well, so that you've got some context against which to assimilate the information we're going to give to you. So Buck, I'll let you do a quick intro about, you know, the leadership role that you had within the project, and then I'll crack on with the slides.
All right, thank you, Duncan. My name is Matt Buck. I work in the generation sector at EPRI and lead our digital worker efforts. So as over the last several years, as people are transitioning from traditional paper-based processes to mobile devices and headborne devices and cutting-edge technology, I kind of look where we can apply that for utilities and solve some of the challenges that we have. So when I got involved with this, it was a great project and had a lot of fun learning about the technology and finding ways at the height of the COVID pandemic to demonstrate it. So we actually found some ways within EPRI to demonstrate the product and some real world applications, but I'm not going to steal Duncan's thunder. I'm going to leave that to him to tell you what we did. So Duncan, back to you.
Thanks very much, Buck. And really, in that sense, you've got a really good context there from what Buck's introduced himself on, and really the context against which the project was selected through that process within the Incubate Energy Labs program to sort of really bring to the fore. And it's really worth pointing out at this moment, as we move on to the project overview, is the thought leadership that already existed within groups led by Buck and some of the others within EPRI about augmented and mixed reality. And one of the great pieces of work that we'd seen in terms of an academic thought leadership piece on the use of augmented and mixed reality in an industrial context, in any industrial context, actually already come from EPRI itself, and a real looking into the future about how augmented and mixed reality could be used, particularly in power outages, to do tasks such as work assessments for repair crews and so on. With that in mind, when we were selected for the program and we started to really flesh out what the scope of work for the project would be, we had a vision in place, which was for an on-premise style deployment, which would suit the security requirements of many of the partners. But as we transitioned into the actual project itself, we had to moderate that scope of work really due to the reduction in travel that was imposed on us because of COVID-19. But what we ended up doing was really what we talk about a lot at Kognitiv Spark all the time about, and that's really focused on the end user and what the end user needed. And as a result of that, what you see here is these two main bullet points is the focus, which was that there was an acknowledgement that if we had the technical ability to get this to the end user, the line repairman or the technician on site, in a way which was meaningful but reflected the real working environment of that operator, then we would be taking a really significant step forwards in the demonstration of the effectiveness of this technology to the EPRI partners and members. And what you see here really are just some of the artifacts or the digital artifacts that we used in order to demonstrate that capability. And the display of holographic equipment models was really one of those things that Buck and I talked about considerably before the start and had of the project, and really had a very clear understanding that if we could take this and go beyond what most people perceived augmented reality to be, which is a video call, with some two-dimensional representation of information, then we would be taking a step beyond the understanding of the majority of people involved within the digital worker projects at EPRI. And being able to do that remotely, so that you can do that into a workspace where the end user needs it, was really, really critical. And part of what our vision that we brought to the whole project was our mantra as a company, which is making mixed reality work where the end user needs it to work, and not simply giving flashy demonstrations in multi-megabit connected demonstration spaces. This is the team that we pulled together, the Lennox Lab team in Massachusetts, with Mike, Mark, and Justin. We really sort of came on board as willing volunteers to test and evaluate the equipment ourselves as the technology provider. Already focused on some really challenging industrial deployments, but also importantly within the federal space as well. So our largest customer, and it continues to this date, is the Canadian Department for National Defence. And the capability that brought with it was the focus that we've had as a company from day one on the fact that if people are going to adopt mixed reality as a technology and they're going to use one of the software capabilities, one of the first questions they're going to be asking the provider is it secure? Or how do you secure it? Or how do you mitigate against the risk of cyber attack? That work that we've done almost from day one with the Department for National Defence has been focused on that area. And that, I think, was one of the real sort of value adds that we brought to the discussion as the technology provider. And then we had all of that deep insight that came from the digital worker projects that Matt was leading on within EPRI itself. So we had a really good, strong partnership. But behind Kognitiv Spark is that very close relationship that we have had almost again from day one with Microsoft, and the fact that in the demanding industrial spaces where the first words out of people's minds are security and bandwidth, we're very often described by senior leadership within Microsoft corporate as their technical partners of choice, because we can make this work, we can make the technology work where it needs to work, and in a way which has a real impact for the end user. So why remote Spark and why mixed reality in general, really? Because we're not just advocates for our own capabilities, but also the adoption of mixed reality. And mixed reality, just for those on the call who are not necessarily immediately familiar with it, is a very significantly enhanced capability. Virtual reality, most of you will be aware of, where people wear goggles rather than a headset, and those goggles can be anything from a holder to put a mobile phone in front of your face to fully featured virtual reality capabilities. But you're completely immersed in it, and you are cut off from the real world. It's virtual. Augmented reality for us and for Microsoft as well. Augmented reality is where you're putting two-dimensional information into somebody's field of view to assist them and to augment them and to augment their capabilities. Mixed reality is where you put a full three-dimensional capability in front of or in the field of view of an individual. So it's not only the real workspace that you're in right now, that's not obscured or obstructed, but the objects that you put into that can be two-dimensional. But where the real power comes from is the fact that they're three-dimensional objects and artifacts that occupy space as if they were a real object. And those can be linked through IoT to real-time data as well. So using that technology, but also really sort of the why for using that technology. As most of you be aware, particularly in the Western world, we have an aging workforce. We have what's referred to as the silver tsunami. They're moving out of their jobs. They're heading inexorably towards retirement. And when they leave and retire, they take all of that skills base and knowledge that they've attained over a lifetime, in many cases, of work and service to companies and corporations. They're taking it with them. And what we want to do is to create the dialogue about how do we get that knowledge in a timely fashion to the people that need it. And that's the next generation or the younger generations of technical workers and people who need that knowledge in order to be able to learn and do their work more effectively. But doing it on site, and we refer to that as at the point of need. So delivering that knowledge through either digital artifacts or assistance by an expert into the point where that individual needs it, and through experiential learning applies it in a way which is incredibly impactful. I really don't need to talk about the low contact world that we're in right now, but also to sort of underline, what's going on right now, where we have, serious outages in North America, and where travel is not only impacted by COVID, but is also impacted by the reality of storm damage in its own way. And as we move to a sort of a new normal of low contact, the value that augmented and mixed reality, we really came to an understanding and realization of this last year, can play a real part in increasing the safety by reducing the amount of travel that's required for our workforces, wherever they might be. Error reduction, a number of the people, Eric, Annie and Buck will have heard me say this a lot of times, but error reduction is something that comes with this technology. And we were very lucky at an early stage in our growth as a company to work alongside Boeing in some research discussions and projects, with information that they shared very freely with the members of those projects. And they, within their context, report that they will see, using an advanced technology based on mixed reality, a reduction in errors of up to 90%. And that's really significant when you come down to, what EPRI is about, which is, restoring, using technology and capabilities to make sure, that service is lost as infrequently as possible, but when service is lost, it's restored as quickly as possible. And a really important part of that is supporting the frontline worker to make the right decisions in order to reduce errors. Increasing of situational awareness, again, that goes with that one, but also globalization of supply and support chains, where a piece of equipment that somebody may be working on may well have originated from an original equipment manufacturer on the other side of the world and fails so infrequently that the only person who knows how to fix it is the design engineer for that particular piece of equipment in Germany or wherever. And you'll see really that sort of underlining requirement there to use MR in a way which really, like I said, and really underlined everything we did, focused on supporting the guy or the girl at the front line to do their job as quickly as possible in order to improve the operational tempo for the support of critical infrastructure. So we set out really to do this in a way which, maximised the benefit of our technical experience from Kognitiv side, but also lent on that connectivity directly into the product teams at Microsoft, focusing on that end user and really which is quite alien in some respects to the introduction of technology, put the human first. Put the human in the loop as the focus of everything that we were trying to achieve, rather than trying to automate something or replace that particular individual. You've heard me talk about security, but again, presenting things which gave people the confidence that security was not only top of mind for the solution team, but also was something that we could really enable and put into place. Importantly, use of token processes. So what you'll see in these pictures as we go through, and the short video, which I'll show in a little while, is using token processes. So this is designed not to sort of say, this is how we did a particular task, but designed to show everybody who is looking at this, and including the audience today, how we can approach things differently using mixed reality. And using a degree of tokenism, but also opening people's mind to the possible. We really focus very heavily as a company on that. And again, what we emphasize very heavily when we're developing people's technology roadmap for the adoption of mixed reality is get this into the hands of the end user. Once the end user looks at it and sees it, they will tell you how this will have an impact on your operational capabilities as an organization. And whether that has a top line or a bottom line impact, it will return on investment. But you have to have that confidence that they're the people that will take you to that, and it's that operationalization of the capability which is absolutely key. And a lot of those benefits come from those three bullet points at the end. You're making decisions on the front line. Your worker who's fixing something is doing that because they are sharing a common visualization with a heads-up, hands-free capability of mixed reality. You're ensuring comprehension. You're not explaining things which may even be in a language to somebody. They're seeing it with their eyes, and they're able to understand something with their eyes, whether that's showing them the fault, or alternatively, as the expert, sharing a three-dimensional object, which is understood and clearly absorbed by the human brain in its most natural way, which is in a graphical sense. But also, as a result of that, reducing the cognitive fatigue, which in itself gives massive returns because it reduces the likelihood of failure due to stress or fatigue. We work very closely with militaries, as I've already said, and you know the person that we model this on in terms of everything that we build is that person who's fixing something, who's tired, wet, cold, hungry, and under pressure to bring systems back up to full operational capability. That doesn't just describe soldiers, sailors, and airmen. That describes the frontline workers right now who are working in Texas to bring services back up in electrical distribution networks back to full capability in Texas. This makes us different. This is part of the reason why when we pitched, when we were invited to pitch to the final selection committee, everybody at that stage, I think, had an understanding that the market was becoming mature and that there were capabilities out there, but very few capabilities had the ability to do what we've just discussed about the how and the why in the operational environment, and in particular at the initial stages in an on-prem context. We have systems deployed on-prem with the Canadian Nuclear Labs because we're the only capability market that can do that. But in particular, for a cloud-based solution, i.e. publicly using publicly available systems, we could achieve connectivity at very low levels. The Canadian Special Forces have recently been doing trials with our software at 128 kilobytes of connectivity to test the deployment of medical support to forward operating bases. But also particularly something that we emphasized right from the word go, that the introduction of mixed reality wasn't going to become a burden to the operator. It wasn't something they needed to go away and do a 4-week course on and then forget all of it before they actually used it. And this was really, you'll see some of the comments about this later on from the Lennox lab team. Was one of the real sort of I think surprises of people was how quickly people acclimated not only to the hardware, the Microsoft HoloLens, but also to the use of the software. And Mike at Lennox Labs got his HoloLens 2 out of a box. 45 minutes later, he was using it with full functionality on the test object. Security, said more than enough about that. Everybody hopefully has got that message right now. And then also that ability to operate in either environment, whether it's in the nuclear space in an on-prem context, or in a repair situation on public utilities using the publicly available cloud-based solution, and and also within that, demonstrating the maturity that allowed us to have the discussions about data sovereignty and governance. This is what the steps that we went through. We identified two of the test objects that were available at Lennox Labs, an SF6 breaker, which most people who work in that space are very familiar with, and then a relay box from one of the main suppliers to Lennox Labs. And then what we went through was just a really sort of iterative process of working out what it was that Lennox Labs would find benefit from. And that really focused on how we could take somebody who was qualified to work on those pieces of equipment, but was unfamiliar with them, and how we could use mixed reality in order to assist them to do routine tasks in the form of inspections, or in terms of resetting a piece of equipment after it had tripped. We did that again in an iterative process, running through the processes using a normal manual-based approach, and then subsequently bringing in the mixed reality to do either the same tasks or very similar tasks on those pieces of equipment, using remote Spark and the HoloLens 2. You'll see there, that's probably the best picture we've got in this deck, actually, of the HoloLens 2. Some of you will be familiar with the HoloLens 1, which had a completely different form factor. It still was worn completely on the head, and was very much focused on heads up, hands free, but it wasn't as well balanced. And one thing in particular, it didn't have the flip up visor that you can see there, so that somebody could simply take their hand to their head, flip the augmented reality, the mixed reality capability out of the way, and just continue working as if they didn't have the system on their head. And that's one of the adjustments that Microsoft made to the design at a very early stage as a result of feedback through independent developers such as ourselves and their own field teams. So this is typical of the initial walkthrough with paper instructions. I don't think there would be any surprise to people to know that this is very much the way that a lot of processes are still done. It's either a manual or something that's being printed out as part of a work task. And everything is really on the shoulders of the individual to interpret that information, and then to go through the steps and push the button at the end and hope that they've done things in the right way. They may have a supervisor available to them to come and check, but again, if that's the case, then they have to wait for that individual to be free from whatever else it is that they're doing, and then to move forwards. And without any form of confirmation, if the individual is working in a way where they're responsible for the task at hand, then they push the button and in some cases kind of hold their breath whilst the system comes back up to full speed. What I'm going to do now is show you a very brief video of the capability, and it reflects the SEL system that you just saw somebody working on with a paper manual. You'll hear this going on. This is going on in the normal workplace, albeit within the environment of a test lab, and just sort of really reflects, that point that I made right at the beginning, that we created this capability, and the focus for this project was to make it work where the end user, in this case the technician servicing the piece of equipment, needed it to work. I'll let the video speak for itself.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Can you enlarge the model a little bit? There we go.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Trust you too. So it's right in the hall by your sign, but thank you. Okay.
There we go. That looks good.
This one just plays from one. Okay.
Yep. All right. Yep. All right, hold on the next one. Let me get a screenshot. There we go. All right. Now, let me try again. There we go.
Collect images. Well, how about that?
Too cool.
Okay. So let's do OC. Here we go. All right, continuing. Phase OC, no. And there's a no.
So what you saw there was just a number of the capabilities that are just inherent within what we deployed for Lennox Labs. You heard Buck there providing insights. Buck was in Florida, providing direct support to the team at Lennox Labs on the ground. That's an incredibly powerful capability. To bring Buck as the expert, in this case, he was the mixed reality expert, into that environment. What you also saw was the full three-dimensional representation of the SEL 751 breaker, and that was represented as if it was a real object. The first time that the team at Lennox Labs saw that, their reaction was, I thought I could use a screwdriver on it. It was that clear and that detailed. And that's, really sort of for us was kind of, one of those hairs standing up on the back of your neck, because, to hear the end user describing like that was incredibly powerful. But what you also saw was some of the audit tools and some of the other tools there. So Buck at one stage was taking images from his end so that he could log them, and you can see those stored there underneath the main view, in order to have an audit process as he went forwards. But also those can be used for annotations. So they're there and they can be projected into the field of view. And again, you saw that of the worker. And the worker creates a mixed reality workspace around the object that they're or the task that they're carrying out at that particular time. And some of that might be the PDF, which represents the paper manual. Some of it might be the PowerPoint slide that the technician would normally refer to in the when they're being taught in the classroom. But importantly, there also what you saw was that one of the other really powerful aspects of this, and that's the step through animation in 3 dimensions of the task. And in this case, that included text annotations, so that somebody could see something happening, but they could also read that as well. And really, Mike and the team at Lennox Labs, we'll come on to some of this. There was other things that we observed that we know we need to get right in the future, and the way in the technology needs to develop. But overall, the sense that this was something that Mike could have used in order to do this task efficiently and more effectively, and with a reduction of errors, and when he's on cold, wet, and hungry and under pressure, was really came through in this. Albeit it was a really nice summer day in Massachusetts when this was filmed.
Yeah, Duncan, if you don't mind, I can add a little bit to that from the perspective of being the remote expert. The scenario that we developed for this one was we took the SEL relay, and it was responding to an equipment trip and how to pull the information out of the relay to understand what caused the trip. So we've got the holographic model that he placed right there next to it, then to the right is the actual relay. So he could step through, and if you can read the text there, said red light indicates a trip due to timed overcurrent, and it's indicating, what the lights mean on the relay. So the technician there in Lennox could go back and forth from the hologram to the actual piece of equipment and step through it to determine, what information was stored in the relay. So it was really pretty amazing. And as Duncan said, I was able, as the remote expert, to capture screenshots. So then if I, wanted to go somewhere as far as troubleshooting or get the technician to do something, I could make annotations on those screenshots, so then the technician could see those. So I could circle a button, or I could point to a wire for testing, or different things like that. So the image you see there is actually, as the remote expert, that was my view of the technician's workspace.
Cool. Thank you very much, Bob. Appreciate that. So, like I mentioned, there's still work to be done, but this is typical of emerging technology, and especially in the advanced manufacturing space. As any of you who've worked with many of the technologies in advanced manufacturing would know, adaptability to hard hat. And actually, since we finished the project, that's already been dealt with. And one of the partners that we work with, which some of you would be familiar with, which is Trimble, very prominent in the GIS and planning space. They have a fully adapted and certified hard hat HoloLens 2. Connectivity. It's always going to be the challenge, but we were able to demonstrate that at relatively low bandwidths at Lennox Labs. But that is increasingly being improved between, again, the end of the project and where we're at today. And like I said, for the Canadian Special Forces to be using this to demonstrate a proof of concept at 128 kilobytes, not only demonstrates the ability to work at low bandwidth, but also the ability to operate in very dense user environments where everybody is trying to get hold of the bandwidth. Bright sunlight, we're working on that one, and Microsoft for sure are aware of that as one of the key concerns. We just had a professional industrial version of the HoloLens 2 has just been released. We haven't got our hands on it yet, but they've taken a lot of the Microsoft have taken, product group have taken a lot of the feedback that ourselves and others have given them. So that now is certified for C1D2 explosive environments, and also is certified for dust-free clean spaces as well. So they're constantly evolving the hardware, and we know that the bright sunlight piece is one that is moving forwards. And then the in-house model development, and really this is just a business process. It's whether you have the capability within the team within your own team to develop those models, or whether you outsource that. However, again, right from the word go, we've removed that barrier to adoption by not creating a proprietary file type for the holograms. It's an absolutely common file type, which anybody who works with CAD in any form can actually create the GLTF files, which are used for the hologram. And for somebody who's trained and expert in that area, it's about a 5-day process for them to be trained by us in order to create those holograms and those animations. So the pathway for that one is pretty clear as well. This is the feedback. It's a long chunk of text, but Mike and the team were so excited that this is really, I think it is a really good reflection of how enthusiastic they were about the technology and the work that we did on this project. So I'll just leave you to read that one through. But the reaching that point where you're working with a team that is so focused on what they're doing from an operational perspective, and you introduce new technology to them, and they come out with statements like, having this technology available would certainly make my day easier and more efficient. That really, for us, sort of was a fantastic thing to hear, and not just from anybody, but from a team that is known for being extremely demanding when it comes to this type of technology. Well, this type or any type of technology, and introducing it into their workflows. So we're getting towards the end of the slides now, and I know people have been firing some questions in and so on, and assuming that everybody's finished on that one. Those are our details. That's me and Buck in the, and you can reach out to either of us to ask us any questions in the margins of today's discussion, but I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that anybody's got at this stage.
Hey, Duncan, thank you so much. That was great. And we did have a question come in from Caleb at the Knoxville Chamber. And Caleb, I'd invite you to unmute yourself and just ask Duncan.
Yeah, well, it looks like Matt Buck was able to answer that question, which is, it's pretty interesting that you can really implement this into any type of manufacturing process. So one of the issues that we always deal with at the Chamber when we work with manufacturers that we try to recruit to Knoxville is that there's a training component that is really hard to address. So I think that this kind of technology is really interesting if there's a specific training need associated with the manufacturing process, that they're able to just put it on and have somebody talk to them while they're doing hands-on processes. So really, really interested in that. Another question I had was, so there's two sides to it in my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like there's a hardware process and there are folks that are developing the actual lens and the goggles, but it also seems like there's a software and data management side as well. Is that accurate?
Yep. Yeah, it is absolutely accurate, Caleb. And Microsoft, they developed the HoloLens 2, and there are other manufacturers. There's only one other really sort of mature mixed reality headset at market, which isn't quite as capable as the HoloLens, and that's the reason why we use that. But our software is developed in order to be able to port it across to whatever the current platforms are, both from a two-dimensional and three-dimensional, so augmented reality as well as mixed reality headsets, but also importantly what's coming down the line in terms of the development of this in the near to mid-term future. So our expertise is on the software side and making it work as well as it can with the hardware.
Great. So the software development is kind of in unison with the Microsoft team. There's a Microsoft team dedicated to this.
Yeah, very much so. They're referred to as the HoloLens product group within Microsoft, and we're tied in with them at the engineering level, so we have twice weekly calls with them. So we're not a Microsoft company, we're just we're what's referred to as an independent software vendor. But in 2019 we were one of 3 companies globally that were selected to be partners of the year for our software in mixed reality. So they hold us in very high regard.
Great.
I think one of the things that I remember when you guys were pitching, Duncan, and one of the things that stood out for me was the comment you made about being able to teach the cook on a Navy ship, something in the engine room in 15 minutes or something like that. And that really stuck out for me because I thought, wow, this is what we need. This is what industry needs.
Yeah, very much so. It was we had an initial user group as part of our work with the Royal Canadian Navy, and the Navy brought together a group of 19 marine engineers, and they were complete cross spectrum from a young 22-year-old female sailor through to somebody who's within 6 months of leaving service after 30 some years, and he was, your typical cardboard cutout sailor. I can say that because I'm an ex-soldier. So, and he had big fists and tattoos on his arms, and you could almost imagine it sort of saying "hold fast" across his knuckles. And we thought he would be the hardest sell. We really did think that when we got that group together and we were sort of allocated them to do stuff, that he would be the hardest sell. He actually was the easiest to convince, and like Annie said, in the Navy and in the Army. The chefs are regarded as the lowest skilled people in uniform, and they're often referred to as the ration assassins because they can even kill a tin of beans. And he took the headset off after he was using it for an hour. The first time he put it on his head, 45 minutes to an hour, and he just took it off and he said, "With this capability, I could get a chef to do that job." and he was talking about that very similar to the SEL process that you saw there, that we'd created as a capability for the Royal Canadian Navy for a repair by replacement on a piece of communications equipment. So it's a really good story, and I like telling that one a lot. But thank you for reminding me of it, Annie. It's cool.
Yeah, you bet.
I got a question, Duncan.
Hey,
this
Bob.
is Bob Irvin. How are you? What kind of market traction do you have in the States with utilities?
So most of the traction we have with the utilities has either been with we've got a project underway, I believe. I'll have to check with the project management team, but with Southern California Edison, and then the work that we've done with EPRI. But then the remainder is here in Canada, and it's largely with the Canadian Nuclear Labs. So I mentioned they've got one of our on-prem systems, and that's focused on how they develop processes for compact nuclear reactors, which is one of their technology development streams. So it'll mature alongside that technology. But they also use it on the cloud-based systems for development of process as well. And they're using that at their Chalk River Labs in Ontario.
So if you were going to call on a utility, where do you think you'd have the most success? What department would you go for? Where would you do the pilot? Where do you think it's the low-hanging fruit is to demonstrate your capability?
On those linemen,
Okay.
you know, on the people who are constantly having to either take notes or take photos and send them back to somebody to say, what do I do next, or what do you want me to do with this? It's where you know, from my context, it's a sort of I wear lenses which are very colored by my military experience. It's about operational tempo. It's about getting the right information to the people on the ground, but also to their supervisors and managers, so that you can create that decision action cycle and that it can be used more quickly. And you know, from that perspective, that's where I think it's the operational teams that are out there doing this day, you know, repairs and so on, day in, day out, and who are often the ones that are under the most pressure to get services back up and running as quickly as possible. But I know Buck probably has got, you know, a bunch load of other end use cases that he could illustrate that with.
Yeah, if there was a utility situation that I think this has got great potential for, as we see a lot of transition in the power industry right now to distributed assets, to where you've got small generating sources spread out over a wide area, or your traditional hydro or even simple cycle gas turbines going to remote operation, as well as renewables. If you've got a technician that is dispatched to one of these remote locations or some of these distributed assets, then having the ability to connect them with an expert to help them troubleshoot something that they are not maybe as familiar with, I think is a great benefit. And also, some of the remote SME projects we're doing, the utilities are incorporating that effort into their carbon reduction plan. So instead of having experts travel to a site to troubleshoot something, they can now connect them up via a headset similar to this. And then you've got real-time experts in your ear and on your shoulder saying what you see and helping you troubleshoot an issue or solve a problem.
Very good. Thank you.
I've just dropped our. You've got my email address there, Bob, if you wanted to have a further discussion. But I've also just dropped our website into the chat link. One of the reasons why we advocate the HoloLens 2 as a platform isn't just the relationship that we have with Microsoft. It's also the fact that it's not a one-trick pony. So you can have you know, our capability on it, and unlike most of the AR headsets, if it's dedicated to remote work support, that's it. You don't get much else out of it. But with the HoloLens 2, you can have other capabilities as well, and I'm really sort of considering it as the first step in the journey of how we transition from the laptop style of work to sort of full heads up, hands free computing, I think is useful as well in terms of the longer term vision. And one of the things we get a lot of feedback from our industrial partners and also our public sector partners is the fact that as we did with this project, we're not just about selling the software, we're about helping people map out what their transition is going to be towards mixed reality. Most of them are already on the first step because they're asking the questions, but we're not looking at this as simply as a software sell. It's just it's actually about building a partnership which helps people to be successful and to achieve the goals that they have set for themselves in terms of transformational technology.
Right, and I'll add from the remote expert, the functionality is very simple. You saw, my screenshot of the field guy. If I wanted to send him a document or send him a different model, all I had to do was drag and drop it off my desktop onto that view, and then it is instantly sent to his headset, and he can open up the model, he can view documents, he can do whatever he needs to do.
Hey, Duncan, this is Caleb again. Where are you all manufacturing these headsets and doing the software development? Is that done in Canada, or are you all also looking to explore, United States as?
Oh no, we're very much looking at the United States as one of it's one of our two areas. We've opened an office in the UK, which services the UK market. As you'll tell, that's originally where I'm from. And we're looking at the US as the next step in terms of our route to global domination. One of the things we realize is we're never going to boil the ocean. That's not our aim. We want to just be really successful with the partners that we work with to achieve really focused, specific success. But we're aware of the fact that a lot of that will come through being able to operate in the US, and our head office, which is where almost all of our workforce is based, is right here in Canada, and every line of code in the applications that we create is Canadian. It's built here in Canada. It's what allows us to actually approach the security angle in a completely different way to everybody else. Every other offering at market has a third-party app at the heart of it to create the visualization. They use gaming engines, either Unity or Unreal Engine, and that in itself creates another attack vector from a cybersecurity perspective. So we went the hard route and wrote every line ourselves. So it's in answer to your question about where it's being developed.
Yeah, and to clarify, the headset is built by Microsoft. It's an out-of-the-box augmented or 3D holographic headset, and Kognitiv Spark develops the application for it. So we took it out of the box, got familiar with it, loaded the application on it, and as he mentioned earlier, within 45 minutes, we were up and running.
Awesome. Do you all already have kind of a growth plan in place about what you're hoping to do with in the United States?
Yes, but only in terms of what we want to achieve, not the detail about it. So if you want to drop me a line about Knoxville, please do.
I will. Yeah, got your email.
Are you, I got another follow-on if you don't mind. Are you competing with internal teams? So when you go to an industrial or a utility, I'm speaking more from a utility standpoint, but do you find that those folks are trying to do this themselves, and how do you overcome that?
By showing them what we can achieve. It blows people away. Anybody on the technical side of this that understands, how far we are ahead of any of the competitions and how much effort would be involved in creating an internal solution, they basically just run the white flag at the pole straight away and say, okay, what can we do? And that's very apparent where organizations have a mature approach to digital transformation. We still bounce off some opportunities where there's a belief that this is easy and it's simple. But the teams that have a mature approach, they either want to work out a path forwards together, or they just sort of say, right, okay, let's see how we can move forwards. The biggest challenge for us is ego. It's where an individual has championed a particular solution which hasn't delivered the capability, but they're the person that has sort of put their career, if you will, on the line by saying this is the only solution, before they've understood the magnitude of the task ahead of them.
Yeah, and from a utility standpoint, because we work with utilities all over the world, really, nobody else is doing anything like this in the digital space. This is very much cutting edge. There's a lot of remote expert applications that are essentially a headset with a like this, a Microsoft Teams, type WebEx, but no one is doing anything with holographic models and the ability to interact like that with the HoloLens other than Kognitiv Spark.
And importantly, across the whole spectrum, so both on-prem and on cloud. So again, it's very clear very early on with those discussions where people were sort of looking at that at our solution, our cloud solution, and saying that's fine, but our 2-year plan is not only to have the cloud solutions, it's also to have the on-prem solutions or the private cloud solutions, and we're the only team that can bring a mature out-market product to both those environments.
So I'll note that we actually are getting ready to publish the final report from 2020 for all of our 10 projects undertaken. So after this call is over, we will send the Kognitiv Spark report to everybody that registered, so you can get a closer read of the project and the outcomes, and it will have everybody's contact information as well. So, as you have ideas or there are things you want to explore with this technology, reach out to Duncan, reach out to Matt. I think EPRI is keen on continuing forward some of this work. So I think that is something that is being looked into right now. So with that, do we have any other questions or comments from the group? Duncan, what's next on your agenda this year for Kognitiv Spark?
We're working really hard on some sort of some very deep technical challenges for what comes next, and really that's the integration of IoT data in a meaningful way, other than it just being something which is sort of signal processing. And we probably will have I know we'll have an announcement shortly with regards to visualization for situational awareness of sensor data, whether that's IoT or otherwise in a three-dimensional space. So basically making sense of what the data is in a way that the brain can just look at it and go, okay, that's brilliant. And that kind of takes us that will leap us ahead in terms of leap ahead capability. That's going to be amazing for us, and we're already there. We've got government funding here in Canada to do that, and we're just waiting for the government to make the announcement. That's
no kidding.
That's really exciting about that. Yeah, so you'll see it, Annie, and for sure we'll loop in the community so that you get to see that announcement when it's made, and I'm
Excellent.
sure as a result of that, everybody else will see it. And the one thing I would just sort of say to people, and it comes back to that whole point that I made earlier on about getting it into the hands of the end user, because they'll tell you how this can be applied and how it can make a difference. Likewise, if you're already looking at this and thinking, okay, this is something that I'm looking for, please don't feel that if you reach out to me, I'm just going to go on a hard sell. If I don't know the answer to the solution, I probably know a team that's creating the solution or has worked specifically in that area. So we're sort of very collaborative when it comes to that. And if you're thinking we could work with your team, please do reach out, and we can start that discussion about collaboration and making solutions that work for your men and women on the front line. That's it. Thank you very much, Annie.
Well, excellent. Thank you so much, Duncan. Thank you, Matt. This has been a great discussion today. This was such a fun project, and boy, it's so relevant right now, especially as you made mention to earlier. So thanks again for joining us today. And if there are no other questions, we'll call it show done.
Great. Thank you very much, Annie. And thanks very much to the APRI team again for putting this together. It's been a great way to finish the week off. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. And thanks everybody for joining. Bye-bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Ed. See you, everybody.